Does this have to do with cats?
Just let me tell my story. And I got a text from Pete Hegseth last night with a video of the whole family, his family, rooting for Tennessee, almost. And it got me thinking, like, you've been in Tennessee for like a hot second. And now you're a huge Tennessee fan and rooting against me and Texas fan. And Charlie gave me the perfect metaphor because I said, Charlie, there's some animal that does this, that like moves in, takes over. And what is it, Charlie?
It's the brown-headed cowbird.
And what does a brown-headed cowbird do?
And then what they'll do is they come in and they nudge the eggs out of the nest of whatever bird laid them and then leaves.
Yes.
So then the bird has to hatch, sit on those eggs, raises them, and then winds up raising birds that aren't even theirs.
Yeah. He goes into another person's nest, lays his eggs, and then the other one raises their kids. I don't even know. And so my point is he's taken over my nest. He has taken over my nest. And, you know, he's Mr. South, Mr. Tennessee, and now he's talking trash to me. And he wins. And he won, too. And he won, of course.
And they won the game. That's the funny thing. Yeah. The thing about Pete is when he does something, he's all in.
Yeah.
So he's a farmer. He's Tennessee.
He's got a belt buckle. He's got
cowboy boots.
Yeah.
He's in.
He needs to learn how to wring a chicken's neck, though, without a 45.
A 9.
Yeah.
It was a 9. I don't know what's worse.
Well, the 45 is
that
bigger.
Is like the
They're both
creepiest
going to destroy
story
a chicken.
Yeah. There's nothing left.
Yeah.
All right. So that's the 6 a.m. hour. And now it's time for the news. We begin this morning with the civil trial. Former President Trump is facing here in New York. He has now less than 24 hours to post his $454 million bond or risk having his assets seized by State Attorney General Letitia James.
If Trump doesn't pay, his properties won't immediately get turned over to the state, but James already has liens placed on some of his assets in Westchester, New York, with at least half a dozen other properties in the state also at risk of being taken from him.
The former president even faces a threat of having his bank accounts in the Empire State frozen, which could happen as soon as Tuesday.
So that's all expected tomorrow, and it's going to be, I think, so as we talk through this really quickly, I don't know that there'll be some big moment tomorrow. You know, I don't know that you're going to see, you know, Trump Towers yellow taped off or state troopers. But Fani Willis can freeze his bank accounts. She can do that so that no money can go in or out and begin to take over the assets of that. And if she wants to take over real estate properties, that's a process. I mean, she has to file a lien. She has to take that lien to court. But it could all begin as early as tomorrow.
Yeah, you know, there are emails going out, fundraising emails from the Trump campaign going out saying, keep your filthy paws off of, you know, Trump Tower. On the other side, Joe Biden is sending out emails saying, you know, and calling Donald Trump broke dawn.
Yeah.
So, you know, this is a moment. It's a communistic moment. It's a communist moment because this is the kind of stuff that happens in those kinds of countries where you can't defeat your opposition. So you've got to just launch everything you can to discredit, make them lose all their money. And I just think that this moment could be a big moment tomorrow, depending on how they decide to approach it.
And I would warn President Biden against getting into name-calling with Donald Trump. The way is littered with people who have decided that they're going to get into, like, name-calling contests with Donald Trump. Donald Trump usually wins those. But whatever does happen, you know, and who knows what happens with the financial side of all of this. But my goodness, in terms of, like, politics, whether there's the yellow tape or the chain around the doors at Trump Tower or not, it's going to be a political, it'll wind up being a political win.
No doubt.
For Donald Trump.
Right.
No doubt.
It's so funny because on Bill Maher, they keep saying he's the luckiest guy around, right? Like he can't come up with the money and then all of a sudden this Truth Social thing happens and they go, he's so lucky. The timing is amazing.
They're creating it.
Yeah, they're creating it. But every time something happens, his, you know, whether it was Mar-a-Lago or this, his numbers go up. And on Bill Maher's show, somebody said, well, I think he's made a deal with the devil. What's going on? And I actually had the opposite thing. I thought maybe a lot of people are praying for him. So who knows? We'll have to figure that one out.
Well, a minute ago I said Fani Willis. I meant Letitia James on this process that begins tomorrow. Thought about Fani Willis because her name is sitting right there in the prompter because she's spoken for the first time since really her outburst in court. I mean, you remember her outburst in court. Watch this.
You're confused. You think I'm on trial. These people are on trial for trying to steal an election in 2020. I'm not on trial, no matter how hard you try to put me on trial. So let me tell you which one you lied in. Right here. I think you lied right here. No. This is the truth, Judge. And it is a lie. It is a lie.
All right, so we've now heard from Fani Willis for the first time since that moment, and she has a warning for Donald Trump.
The other thing that is kind of interesting about all this, you look at all these places where Trump is being persecuted. They're in places where, like, crime is out of control. Lawlessness, like Atlanta, D.C., New York City, they've got bigger problems. And I just think it looks so bad. And however defiant she wants to be, I don't think that it works. And I can't help but think that it probably doesn't work with her own, you know, voters and supporters. They've got bigger problems themselves, you know?
I don't know. I think in her area, she kind of, because she doesn't back down, she's going up against one of the most powerful men in the world. And I think that there is something that you could go to Twitter sphere and look at some of her supporters. They like that she's being tough and not backing down. That said, I think you're right on the grander scheme that I don't think this looks good for anybody.
That's the great question, Charlie. And you know, you actually brought this up yesterday here on Fox and Friends as we see polling begin to reflect that Latino and black voters have shifted away from Joe Biden and to some extent shifted toward Donald Trump. When does the pandering stop working? When does reality begin to impact, you know, as you point out, quality of life when it comes to crime, the effect of illegal immigration? And I don't know, though. I mean, I do see the greater polling, but I mean, I'm going to be honest with you. When I see Fani Willis, I think she gets a lot of cheers at the end of something like that. I think that kind of defiance is appreciated. The only question is, like, how reflective is that? You know, how reflective is Twitter? How reflective is the people in her immediate surroundings versus the wider audience?
And you always have to, it's like looking at campaign signs. You always have to be careful about looking at one little thing. But one little thing that I can't get out of my head was when he was riding through to get his mugshot in Atlanta, and he's going down the street, and all these people are coming out of their homes in these neighborhoods, and they're all like waving and cheering. And again, you can't extrapolate too much from that. But it does suggest that there's and some of it is just sort of Trump's ability to stir enthusiasm.
He's a pop culture creature, right?
Total pop culture.
Total pop culture. I would say also, Fannie Willis is becoming that too. And I've said this on the couch before to Will and Pete. I think she's auditioning to become the next like TV judge or something. She's ready for reality TV.
Well, Ashley Merchant is one of the lawyers for one of Trump's co-defendants who helped spear up the investigation and the revelation into Fannie Willis and Nathan Wade's relationship. And she was on One Nation last night with Brian Kilmeade.
We're waiting on the appellate courts to decide if they're going to let us appeal it. And if they do, it's going to take about 6 months for that process to work its way through the appellate system. But I really don't think that this push to try this case this summer is genuine, because there's so many moving parts and there's so many things that could happen if they really wanted this case to move forward. If Fannie Willis wanted it to move forward, she could recuse herself. She could have a neutral, disinterested prosecutor who could get up to speed very quickly on the case if they actually wanted to prosecute all of this. They could narrow down the indictment. They could sever out certain defendants. They could do a lot of different things that they're not doing that signals that they really don't want to try this case quickly.
So we'll see how that case moves forward in Georgia. Meanwhile, let's move to this. The New York Times headline reads as follows: James Carville, the Cajun who can't stop raging. And it has this quote from the man who once headed up the campaign for Bill Clinton. He says about today's modern left: no one wants to live like this. Whoever thought it was a good idea to tell people you can't hug them, or you got to be careful, or you've got to think about names to call them, or other than the name you know them by. There's nothing wrong with me being white, or you being white, or them being black, or me being male, or you being female. It's a giant, stupid argument.
You know, it's interesting. So this article...
It's about woke politics.
Absolutely. And so this was in the New York Times. He was interviewed, I believe, by Maureen Dowd in Louisiana, in his home state. And it was a fascinating interview. He talked about how he was a professor and made a funny joke that, you know, of course, we all laugh all the time about all the students who turn into professors because they don't say exactly, you know, they say politically incorrect things. And he sort of talked about his own personal dissatisfaction and of living in this new woke world that his own party is championing. And he has a suspicion about who's behind it. He says it's basically a lot of unhappy women. Here he says, quote, "A suspicion of mine is that there are too many preachy females. Don't drink beer, don't watch football, don't eat hamburgers. This is not good for you. If you listen to Democratic elites, NPR is my go-to place for that." He's right about that. The whole talk is about how women of color are going to decide this election. And I'm like, well, 48% of the people that vote are males. Do you mind if they have some consideration? It was a fascinating interview.
But could you imagine if Will or I said that? We would be in so much trouble talking about preachy women. I would get killed over saying something like that. But by the left.
I don't care anymore.
Oh, no, I'm not saying that I would care. I'm saying that we'd get killed.
I don't think you... I'm not debating. You know, do you think that tide's turned, though? And
I do think... No,
I think that's why even James Carville feels a little bit of ability. He is pretty plain spoken. Yeah. But I think, Charlie, there is that what is the school marm politics is breaking, I think.
But here's what happens on the other side. So he says this, and then the wokey people in power in the party, because let's face it, he's semi-retired. He's involved, but he's semi-retired. They go, "Shut up, boomer. You don't know what's going on." I mean, that's sort of the debate going on in the party, right? The old school liberals from the Clinton era are like, I don't quite get it. Even sometimes Joe Biden, he's carrying water for it, but he seems really confused about it sometimes as well. I don't know.
Well, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Charlie, but I mean, you think he gets away with it because he's on the left?
Oh, no, and by the way, I think it's fantastic that he's doing it because, you know, conservatives spend a lot of time nitpicking the Republican Party for good reasons because they screw a lot of things up. But the problem in our politics is actually, the bigger problem is the left has just kind of slid off the edge of the planet.
Crazy.
And so, you know, good on, I wish he'd done it back when maybe it would have been more of a cost to him. But you know, we have to somehow have the opposition party back in sane world in order, or things are...
Has woke run its course?
I actually totally agree with Will. Yeah. I think it has. I mean, think about what you can. Think about what we were debating just years ago about. You know, you would get killed for anything.
And you think, real quick, and we got to move on. If I had you guys pick a prediction, which one do you think is more likely? That woke continues on its march to insanity, and that we have things like trans ageism, you know, coming up. You can identify with whatever age you want to be, right? That's one course. Or the other is we look back on history in the years between, let's say, 2018 and 2022 were some of the dumbest years in American history where we devolved into identity politics. Which one's more likely?
I think that the woke thing is running its course. And not to toot our own horn, but I think a lot of it has to do with the comedians that we have at Fox who make fun of all this stuff. And it's such a fat opportunity to make fun of them. And no other comedians are making jokes about the things that we have people on our network making fun of. And I think that people like Jimmy Fallon and Greg Gutfeld, their ability to poke fun, to be the court jesters and make fun of these people is very effective, and it's working. This is why humor is such an important part of
I think it's working on Gen X and up. I have a fear that, and we've talked about this before, that the younger generations are highly indoctrinated in it, that they've drank this water, and it's part of the way they think. But I hope I'm wrong. Anyway, let's move to this. Prince William and Princess Kate releasing their first joint statement after the Princess of Wales revealed her cancer diagnosis.
And we're learning more about a symbol of hope that was featured in her emotional video.
Chanley Pater is here with the details. Good morning, Chanley.
Hey, good morning, everyone. The overwhelming response of support and well wishes from people all across the globe for Princess Kate has prompted an official response from the royal couple. In the statement, they say they are extremely moved by the public's warmth and support and grateful for the understanding of their request for privacy at this time. Now, this is the first joint statement from the Prince and Princess of Wales since Kate Middleton's poignant video announcing she'd been diagnosed with cancer.
I am well and getting stronger every day by focusing on the things that will help me heal. For everyone facing this disease, in whatever form, please do not lose faith or hope. You are not alone.
Prince William himself has not spoken out individually on his wife's condition, but Kate did share in her message that the two are spending quality time at their home with their 3 children. But Kate's video is making headlines for a symbolic reason as well. The 42-year-old princess shared her diagnosis while sitting on a park bench in front of a field of blooming daffodils, a flower that has become known as a symbol of hope and resilience for cancer patients and survivors, with the bright yellow representing the prospect of brighter days ahead for those battling the disease. So now, as far as when we may see the princess return to her official royal duties, we're told by a Kensington Palace spokesperson that she will, as soon as she's cleared to do so by her medical team. Guys.
All right, so look, Chanley's here. She's new, and I just said I'm going to get to know Chanley. I think she's going to be around a little
She
bit.
is.
I'm talking about on air with you, and they're like, Will, don't be terrible. Like, that's because I'm judging. Like, how much you going to be around? But you're going to be around.
Yes,
She's going to be around.
I'm here.
You like her?
All right.
Happy to be with you guys.
Good.
All right.
She's from Arkansas.
That's right.
Her accent now. All right, let's turn now to your headlines. Russia detaining 11 suspects accused of being involved in an attack on a packed concert hall that killed at least 133 people in Moscow Friday. And despite ISIS-K claiming responsibility for the attack, Russian President Vladimir Putin says the suspects have ties to Ukraine, something both officials in Washington and Kiev deny. U.S. National Security confirming, quote, ISIS bears sole responsibility for this attack, and there was no Ukrainian involvement whatsoever. Just in, Pope Francis reading his homily during a Palm Sunday event at the Vatican. The Pope, who recently suffered from bronchitis and the flu, did preside over the service, but his prepared remarks were not read, not even by name. He instead blessed the palm fronds and olive branches for the thousands who attended the Mass.
His health is deteriorating very quickly. You know, Charlie, when they start talking about sports, I glaze over and I start going through my mom list of things I need to do after the show. And then they'll start talking to me and I don't even know what they said.
Really nice.
See, I would like March Madness better if we just went right to the last game. Kind of like the basketball game itself. If we just played the last 2 minutes of a basketball game, that'd be fantastic.
Do you know
actually
which one I was
fair
talking about? Creighton and Oregon? Which one was the Ducks and which one was the Blue Jays?
No idea.
Really?
I like this guy. And he's going to be doing pop culture roundup.
That's going to be a rodeo.
All right. Squatters arrested for killing and stuffing.
2 suspected squatters arrested for killing a woman in her New York City apartment, stuffing her body in a duffel bag and stealing her car. As squatting plagues the nation, there are numerous internet forums offering how-to guides to getting into a home and establishing a right to be there. So why has squatting become such a widespread problem, and what can people do to protect themselves? Here to discuss is Senior Attorney of Property Rights for Pacific Legal Foundation, Mark Miller. Mark, thanks for being with us this morning. You know, I remember in law school talking about adverse possession, and some of these things you're like, wait, why does this make sense? How do you have your own clear property rights, subverted by somebody just comes in and says, hey, now it's mine? Explain to us really quickly the legal background of squatting.
Well, that's exactly right. But this is nothing like adverse possession. We certainly did learn in first year of law school that, if you were to move into someone else's property that was empty, it wasn't clear who owned it, and you were openly living there after a number of years, 5 years in some states, 7 years in other states, longer in others, you could go to court and say, I have a right to be here. I've taken over it. That's not what squatting is. Squatting is nothing like adverse possession, and we need our state legislators to start changing the laws to make it clear that squatters do not have any rights to properties at all.
But give me the rationale. Why do squatters have rights, Mark?
Well, I think it's basically an oxymoron. It's a misunderstanding of the law. Too often, and particularly in our blue states, we treat squatters who have no right to be on your property as if they are tenants. We're seeing this in New York, Illinois, and other states. They just move in. You're not paying attention perhaps for a month in New York, even shorter in other states. And then they say, well, I have a right to be here. They wave around a piece of paper, say, I have a lease. And then law enforcement doesn't really know what to do. And it puts you in a position where you have to evict them.
Oh, so they wave around a fraudulent lease that they could draw up, and then a cop's not a judge. He can't sit there and litigate whether or not something is a legitimate contract or not. And now you've got this standoff. Here's some tips, by the way, for avoiding squatting. Lock doors and windows at all times. Routinely check the property for any signs of entry. Make friends with your neighbors and ask them to alert you if they see anyone on the property. Post no trespassing signs on the doors and yard gates. Mark, I know the situation you described for us could happen literally overnight, but do these types of situations that are occurring across the country, is it like somebody goes on vacation, they go away for a long weekend? Like, when does this squatting take place?
Well, that's exactly right. The squatters are looking for houses that are easy marks or for apartments. So you need to take measures, as you just said, get to know your neighbors. You want your neighbors to alert you. If they know you and they see something amiss, they're going to call you. I can remember my grandparents who were snowbirds. When they were down in Florida, if something was amiss at their house, the neighbors would call them, or even the police would call them. So get to know your local officer. You need to have signs up, make it clear. You want your house to look lived in. The squatters, just like a pickpocket in Times Square, are looking for an ezy mark. So what you need to do is make it clear the squatters need to go bother somebody else, not you.
Okay, 2 questions just as a follow-up short on our way out. One, where is this happening across the country? Where is it more pronounced a problem than other places? And 2, what's in it for the squatters? A couple of days, night, long-term stay? Why all the effort on behalf of the squatters?
Well, it's especially happening on that first question, especially happening on the coast, because housing has gotten so expensive. We need our local and state governments and federal governments to make it easier to build housing and cheaper. If there's more housing, this is a law of supply and demand. We have a demand for housing. We need to make housing cheaper. And the reason squatters are doing it is what free place to live. Who wouldn't want that? But we need to make it clear to them that they can't do it, that there will be consequences. We need to have laws that make it clear to squatters. If you move in, you're going to be removed very quickly.
Free place to live for a little while. We need to speed up what it means a little while, to your point. Mark Miller, great to have you on the show this morning, helping us understand this issue. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, the White House works to rally Hispanic voters, but even Bill Maher is ripping Democrats pandering to minorities.
Today's Democrats should move on from identity politics. It's not working.
As their campaign kicks off, how polls are spelling trouble ahead of November. Next.
A Fox weather alert. A winter storm is causing trouble for the Northeast. Hundreds of flights are delayed, and thousands in New York and New England are waking up without power this morning. A coastal storm causing heavy snow and flooding in the area. Let's check in with meteorologist and our friend Adam Klotz for a Fox weather forecast. Adam?
Hey, good morning, Rachel.
Morning.
Yeah, this was a big winter storm we saw run up the East Coast. It seems like it should be spring. It technically is spring, but we just keep tracking these winter-type systems. There it was. We saw as much 20 inches in some of these area ski resorts running a little further to the north of New York City. It was all heavy rain up and down the coast, and we're already watching the next winter system currently moving across portions of the northern plains. This is going to be a big one. So heavy snow across the northern plains, some severe weather a little further to the south in the central plains, and then by Monday, severe weather along the Gulf Coast, possibly some tornadoes. But for today, if we're really highlighting today all the way through Tuesday and that winter weather, everything here in the orange, that's a blizzard warning. We're expecting extreme winds, really heavy snow with this one, winds gusting 50, 60 miles an hour. It will be a whiteout as far as conditions go. And then I'm going to show you the snowfall totals. These purples are indicating feet of snow across portions of the Great Lakes. So winter, even though it's spring, still in effect. Those are your weather headlines for now. Rachel, tossing it back over to you.
All right, thank you, Adam. Well, President Biden works to win over Hispanic voters in key swing states. He's launching Latinos con Biden-Harris as Bill Maher rips the Democrat Party for pandering to minority voters.
Outdated racial pandering is one reason Democrats lose elections. When Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi put on kente cloth, I don't think it earned them one vote for their powerful emotional ties to Ghana. Today's Democrats should move on from identity politics. It's not working.
Here to weigh in is Libra Initiative President Daniel Garza and co-chair of Let's Win for America Action and political analyst Janelle King. Janelle, let's start with you. So race baiting, all that victimhood politics, has it run its course? Is it not working anymore with minorities?
Oh, it's not working at all with minorities. I think these comments, these emotional outbursts, just this whole desperate and unhinged attack on the Black community or now the Latino community, it's just something that's just not working. It's not working for our community or the Hispanic community. But if you think about it, if Trump didn't do anything right when it came to the Black community, the one thing that I can say he did consistently is that he did make the Black vote a priority. He talked about it. He had put it in the forefront of people's minds. And then he turned around and he delivered on some of his promises and what has been promises that our community has been waiting on for years and sometimes decades. And so when you look at it, the bottom line, President Biden is coming into this conversation from behind. And I think that he understands that. However, as Republicans, we have to be mindful that there are a few topics that Democrats kind of weigh in on that catapults them to the front. And those topics are reparations, racism as a whole, education, particularly when it comes to